Welcome to Live with Kellye Ken, a program devoted to legal education and to the greater role and mission of law schools. I'm Ken Randall, a former law school dean and the founder of iLaw Barbary Distance Education, and my co-host is Kellye Testy, also a former law school dean and the CEO and president of LSAC. Before I do anything else, I want to tell Kellye, happy anniversary. This is our 2-year anniversary of doing this program. We started in August 2018, thinking we were doing a one-time program. And I'll say by popular demand, we did a program just about every month since. So Kellye, let me just begin by telling you thank you for letting me join you on this for the past 2 years.
It's a great pleasure, Ken. Thank you.
And also, Kellye, want to really congratulate you. As the president of LSAC, you and your organization have done a phenomenal job in putting the LSAT online at a time when states all around the country are struggling to put bar exams online. LSAC has the LSAT Flex. You're doing a phenomenal job, and everyone in legal education appreciates you.
Thank you. We're glad it's going so smoothly, and we'll do our best to keep it that way for all of you candidates who are making your journey out there.
Great. Thank you. Well, we have a great program today, and for those of you who have joined us before, we're going to have a little bit of difference in our format today. Normally, we pick just one subject area, and we have a panel of about 4 deans, but today we're going to look comprehensively at legal education in 2020, and we have one rock star panelist with us today, Dean Jenny Martinez, the Dean of the Stanford Law School. Dean Martinez, we are delighted to have you with us. You have so much going on. You've shared that today is the first day of classes at Stanford. Dean Martinez is a renowned scholar and lawyer in the area of international human rights. Before joining the Academy, she had a great legal career as a practitioner, former clerk on the United States Supreme Court to Justice Stephen Breyer, and then before that on the Second Circuit Court of Appeals with Judge Calabresi. So Dean Martinez, Kellye and I thank you and welcome to Kellye Ken.
Thanks for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here and have the chance to step back and take a look at the big picture. So thanks for hosting.
Thank you. Thank you. Kellye, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, Ken, thank you. And I wish you the happy anniversary as well. This is fun to do, and it's great to have all of you with us today. So I want to thank everybody for signing on. We have a really big crowd. We had over 4,100 registrants, and I see lots of participants. So one of the things I wanted to do as we start is let all of you know, especially candidates for law school, that we'll do our best today to answer questions that you might have. Many of my staff are online to help answer individual questions about your enrollment journey. So we'll get to as many of you as we can. And I always want to remind you that if you don't get your question answered today, please visit lsac.org, our website that has a lot of information for you. You can also call us. And of course, we also have the email, the K&K questions that you can submit to, and we'll answer your question there if we don't get to it. But I want to assure you that we'll get to all that we can, and I know that our program today will answer a lot of the big questions you have about law school. So Dean Martinez, I thank you for being with us. It's really terrific to be with you today. And I'm going to get us started by saying that, wow, 2020, what a year. I'm glad you guys have started school today, and hope you'll share a little bit about how that's going. But I wanted to ask kind of a general question to get started, and that is that when we think about 2020, the pandemic, the economy, rising tide of protest, and renewed devotion to anti-racist strategies that we need so much in our world. There's a lot going on, and so maybe you could begin by just giving us a few of your reflections about what the role of law and legal education are at this time. It's quite an intersection.
Yeah, I think it's such a troubled time in the world, and the ways in which society is troubled right now really highlight the importance of lawyers as problem solvers, of lawyers in helping people come to solutions and resolving differences in a way that is based in evidence, that's based in logic, and the sort of ways that people who don't necessarily agree can come together through government, through reform of legal institutions to address some of these problems. And so, as distressing as it is to see so many of the things that are going on in society right now, I think it's a really interesting time for students to be entering law school, because current events so much show the power of law in shaping the society we live in and the way that we interact on a daily basis and the opportunities that people have in life. And it's a great moment to go into law as a profession, because you really have the potential to make a difference, to make things better, to be a problem solver, to figure out what's not working, and to think about how we could do it better. And so, as challenging as it is, I think it's an inspiring time in a lot of ways. I think we're seeing a lot of young people interested in law school. I was at a summer program online earlier this summer for high school students from underrepresented backgrounds who were thinking about law as a career. And I saw just so much energy from those young people about the potential to make a difference.
That's really great to hear. And Dean Martinez, our research matches that too. We see a lot of interest in law school right now, and many of the reasons that the candidates are citing is they want to get out there and make a difference in the world. And so, like you, I think law continues to be a great pathway to do that. Let me ask, if I could, can you share a little bit about your own pathway into law? Did you always know you wanted to be a lawyer, or even a professor or dean?
I don't think I did, although it's interesting. In a way, when I look back, it seems more like a logical choice for me than it seemed at the time. So throughout my high school and college years, I had a lot of different interests and passions. I was very interested in science, for example, and did a lot of coursework in college in both physical sciences like chemistry and physics, and I completed my pre-med requirements. I ended up being a history major, but I did everything necessary for a chemistry major except the senior thesis. So I was a little bit all over the place in terms of what I might have done in life. I think I could have ended up as a doctor. I could have ended up as a scientist. But I did, in the end, after taking a little bit of time off after college, decide to go to law school. And the reason I say, looking back, it seems more logical than at the time it did, is that my mother is a lawyer, and I had always been inspired by her career. She went to law school in the 1960s at a time when there were about 10 women out of her law school class of 500. And it was definitely not a common career choice for women. She was really interested in helping people. Her entire career has been, she's retired now, but has been in public interest law and government work, and with nonprofits. And so when I was, my first memory of law is of her as she was a lawyer for the Youth Law Center in San Francisco, representing kids in school issues related to access to education and things like that. And the satisfaction I could see she got from helping people who really needed lawyers, and then later in her work in public interest organizations and with government, really from a very early age, I had seen that law was a way you could help people and make a difference in the world. And so I think I'd had that inspiration all along, but it took me a while to realize that that was something that I wanted to do as well. And it wasn't until after college, when really right after college, I could have taken many different paths based on the interests I had.
Well, I'm certainly glad you chose this one. It's great to have you in the profession. And I want to note too, Dean Martinez, that a lot of our candidates often ask us, is there a certain major you have to have, or a certain path? And I hope that your comments help them see that there are many pathways to coming into law school. And I find too today that our law schools, really welcome diversity. They're very sincere in terms of hoping, to open the doors widely to all of you candidates out there. So, Dee Martinez, let me follow that up by just asking a little bit more about the timing. You know, some candidates right now are saying, you know, is this the right time? You mentioned classes start today. You know, how are you feeling about the semester and just the timing of students starting law school during all that we have happening?
I think it's going to be a very personal choice for people about when they decide to apply to law school. I mentioned that I myself took a little bit of time off after college. And for me, it was very productive to have that time out of school. At Stanford, I think something like 80% of our first year law students have had time off after college. And so I think that's a common trend in legal education. So I think if students are thinking, you know, should I decide now? Should I decide later? I think it's a very personal choice. I think there are people I know who maybe wanted to go to law school and never quite pulled the trigger, and later in life come to regret it, that they always put it off one more year, and then it eventually seemed too late to do it, to unsettle their lives, and they wish they had done it. At the same time, what I see in my students at Stanford is that those who've made a really deliberate choice that they want to go to law school, not just because they don't sort of know what else to do, or their parents think it's a good idea, or it'll impress their relatives that they're becoming a lawyer, but they really want to do it, that they're the ones who are happiest in law school, because law school it's hard. It's a lot of work, and you really have to be sure that it's the right thing for you. So what I would say to students is to think about why you want to go to law school, and whether you're certain that this is the right path for you. And if it is, I would go ahead and take the leap. But it's going to be a very individual choice for people.
Thank you for that. And do you want to share a little bit about what the start of school looks like for you right now? You mentioned today's the start. Are you in person? Are you online? How's it going?
Yeah, I shared right before this started some pictures of our outdoor classrooms at Stanford, which I'll share in just a minute with all of you. We're following, like many law schools, a hybrid model this fall, where we have many classes online, but we also have some classes meeting in person. And we're doing this to try to be flexible, to keep our students, our faculty and staff as safe as possible in pandemic conditions, but at the same time recognizing that for some students, they want that more personal interaction, and that there's something meaningful about the in-person contact. I think that the online classes, from an intellectual perspective, I think that we've done, I think that they really do deliver the content that students need to learn the law. But what we did see in spring quarter when we were entirely online was that some students were lonely and isolated, studying alone on their rooms. And there's only so many Zoom happy hours you can go to before, you sort of definitely feel like you're missing out on some of the human interaction. So at Stanford, we're trying to take a very cautious approach with in-person instruction. All of our students arriving on campus were tested for COVID on the day they arrived, and tested again on day 5, and are being tested at least weekly during the quarter to make sure that we're really not allowing any spread to happen in the community. And in that context, we're doing most of our bigger classes online, but we have set up a number of outdoor classrooms to take advantage of the open air environment, which all the medical experts say is a lesser risk in terms of what might be going on. And so 6 feet apart and in masks outdoors is the type of classrooms that we've set up. And I'll share with you just a picture of one of our outdoor classrooms that we're using. You can see we've got it set up with chairs spaced apart outside. Everyone's at least 6 feet apart. And we've got the AV equipment for those students who are participating exclusively online, because we want to make sure to support anyone who doesn't feel comfortable coming into a physical environment. They're absolutely free to do everything online. Faculty are free to teach entirely online if they want. It's just an option for those people who find it rewarding in some ways to have that that in-person interaction in addition to the online. And then we have a number of smaller seminar or breakout sessions set up outdoors. Again, this is one of our outdoor rooms where it's set up for 10-person breakout sessions where you might have a big class of contracts meeting online, but then once a week you might, for example, meet in a smaller group in person so that you would have at least some chance to interact at a more personal level. So, you know, I think that everyone is trying to deal with a great deal of uncertainty as you see universities and law schools trying to navigate this. And so we're trying to be as cautious as we can and to support people's choices where people who don't feel comfortable coming in person really shouldn't feel any pressure to do so. But for those who want to set up a safe environment with testing and outdoor spaces for some personal interactions.
Thank you, Dean. That's wonderful to see. And I have been really impressed by how flexible the schools have been, where the schools are trying to offer a route for the comfort level of their students and their faculty, and to find, you know, a place where, depending upon what everyone's needs are, they can get those met in a safe way. So it's great to see that you've been able to do that in this hybrid way, and also give people that want more of that interaction a chance for it. One of the things that Dean, that we're seeing already in the questions that blends very well with the question I wanted to ask you, is just that many of the candidates are noting that, of course, when they come to LSAC and they fill out their applications, they have their LSAT score, they have their GPAs. They've also noted that some schools have gone to pass-fail grading during COVID, and they're curious about your view on, you know, do you think that would hurt their application at all if they've had a semester where there's been a pass-fail type of grading? And just anything else that you like to encourage people to do when applying that might help them stand out or sort of show who they are in a competitive environment. So any suggestions for along those lines?
I think that law schools understand a lot of universities went pass-fail last spring when the pandemic hit. And indeed, I think most law schools themselves went pass-fail in our grading of our own students in the beginning of the pandemic in the spring. And so I think that everyone will understand, looking at those transcripts, that it hasn't been a normal year, whether it's because a university went pass-fail or because a student might have had a rockier semester than previous semesters. I think people understand that this is an unprecedented and difficult time. And so I would expect people to take that. I think schools are taking that context into account. And I think one thing that all law schools are really looking for when students apply is trying to figure out why they want to come to law school, what makes them tick, because it is that passion and real desire to study law that makes students successful, that they really want to do it and they have an excitement about doing it, and conveying that in people's applications and describing their work experiences or what things in life led them to the decision to apply to law school is really important.
Good. I like to remind our candidates that it is really true, just as you say, that, you know, we're looking in legal education, we want those students' voices. And so we're really asking, you know, how are you going to use your voice to make law different, you know, to make the impact you want to make? So expressing in your application who you are and what motivates you and what you hope to do through education, that's a really important way to let them see you. And our schools are wonderful about that. They do holistic review. They really do look beyond the LSAT and GPA to the letters of recommendation and your statements. So putting that full picture of yourself forward is exactly right, from my experience, that schools are looking for. Dean, I want to ask you another follow-up about the really how the pandemic has affected legal education, and that is that how would you say your school and others that you know of are are responding to students that may have growing anxieties about during this time, and not just the pandemic, but there's also so much unrest in many of our cities. There's such a greater call for racial equality. How is this particular juncture we're at? How are students getting support during this time?
Well, one thing I think that has been important for us is providing additional financial aid and resources to students who are experiencing economic issues because of COVID. So we set up an emergency fund to provide students with money for things that they might have needs from resulting from the pandemic. And have looked at, and we have increased financial aid across the board for our students to make it to alleviate some of the problems that we know students are facing. And I think also, as we've brought together in public life, not only the pandemic, but as you suggest, this reckoning with issues of race and racism in the United States, combined with, in some parts of the country, natural disasters of hurricanes and fires. I think just recognizing the stress that students are under and trying to look for creative ways to help them continue to move their careers forward while acknowledging that it is an extraordinarily stressful time, and to also provide coursework that's salient to them in terms of addressing these many social issues. And I think that one of the things that can be helpful for students is keeping that eye on the ball of why you came to law school, why is it important, and the relevance of what you're doing in classes to those goals that you may have in coming to law school in the first place. And so one thing at Stanford, for example, for our 1Ls, we have, in addition to the doctrinal classes in the fall of torts, contracts, and Civ Pro, and our legal research and writing class, we also have small discussion seminars of groups of 10 on topical issues. And we have 18 of those that we're offering this year. And the topics vary, what faculty are interested in teaching, but you can see reflected in the topics that faculty have chosen just many of the salient issues about criminal justice reform, about election law, about some of the issues in technology, and the policy and ethical issues around technology, and giving the students the chance to engage with those cutting edge issues, I think helps put in context why they're in school and the important mission that they're trying to serve by pursuing this degree.
That's a wonderful opportunity during the first year to be able to explore those issues. If we could maybe stay on that topic of those cutting edge issues for a moment, I can't resist, because in addition to being a dean, you're also an amazing legal scholar, a great thinker about law and policy, and have had both a lot of publications and a lot of work in litigation. I wonder if you want to share just one or two things, one or two issues that are really on your mind right now. As we noted, there's a lot going on out there, and are there a couple of things that you think particularly need our attention right now in the legal profession?
Yeah, I think one of the issues that really cuts across many different areas of law is the growing impact of technology on society for both good and ill. And lawyers really in the coming decades are going to need to be engaged with coming up with wise, ethical policy solutions to some of the issues around privacy, for example, or free speech or automation. And I see that just looking at so many of the issues that are in the news today, whether it be online content and the First Amendment to autonomous vehicles. It used to be that law and tech was sort of a specialty field, and at Stanford it's always been something that we focus a lot on and have been particularly strong in because we're in Silicon Valley. But now I look across the law school curriculum and I really see that technology cuts across every class. In First Amendment or constitutional law, our scholars and students are grappling with the questions of how do you fit something like Facebook into a framework of free speech? If you're looking in torts, you're looking at self-driving cars. If you're in administrative law, we had a policy lab project that we had our students do last year, where we had 12 law students and 12 PhD students in computer science working with federal government agencies, looking at how they were using artificial intelligence in the administration of governance. If you're in criminal law, you're looking at the use of algorithms by law enforcement, and finding a way to grapple with these issues across all those policy domains, and also to look at how it's going to affect the practice of law and can potentially improve access to justice for people who may not have lawyers. I think that the use of technology in the legal profession and in the legal system, on the one hand, has tremendous potential for making legal knowledge and tools more accessible to non-lawyers and people who couldn't in the ordinary system pay for a lawyer, but it also has the potential to exacerbate differences, as more sophisticated litigants might have access to sort of big data and things like that that might make the litigation more favorable for them. So I think grappling with those issues around law and technology, not just in the policy sense of how do you deal with online speech, but also in how they're changing the delivery of legal services, is something that is going to be very, very important for law schools and for law students in coming years.
Really is. There's so much just in that intersection. One of the funnest things I find about law is that it's really in everything. You know, I used to like to not really teasing, but I say, law is like the hub, and any subject you can think of, there's a legal component to it. So really gives our students and our graduates a wide range to pursue their own interests, because whether it's technology or healthcare or business or music or whatever it might be, the sciences, there's a role there at the intersection of that with law.
Absolutely.
Good.
And I think also, one of the things that, a second thing that I think intersects with some of the law and technology issues, but that is, so readily apparent from everything in the headlines, is our country's need to grapple with the history of racism and the ways that the legal system was involved in setting up rules on everything from, the redlining and the way that housing and was set up, and how that's played down to voting rights, to criminal justice. That law is so integral to that it's extremely important that lawyers recognize the role that law had in setting up a system that didn't work for everyone in the US the way it should have, and figuring out how law can be used to fix that is very important.
It really is. And one of the ways that I've been thinking about that is that, we often talk about a justice system. Let's earn that. For it to really be a justice system, we need to keep reaching for that promise of equal justice. And Dean, I wonder if you might talk a little bit about, outside of the classroom, what kind of opportunities do students have in law school to work on issues of interest to them? What's the greater student life like, and how do you think that's going to play out during this time when we do have some more online experiences rather than in person?
I think that law school is a great time to begin what should be a lifelong commitment in lawyers to pro bono work. That is, pro bono work is for the good of the public and without fee. And pro bono work has an important place in the legal profession because lawyers are the gatekeepers to the legal system. You can't practice law without a license, and that process protects the public by ensuring that those who deliver legal services are adequately trained and ethical and competent and can represent their clients well, but it also creates a barrier to people who can't afford a lawyer. And that's why the legal profession has long had a tradition of pro bono work, of lawyers who might be spend most of their time on paid legal services, but spending some portion of their time helping people who need lawyers and who can't afford it. And I saw that when I was at a law firm. Like many law firms, my firm was very devoted to pro bono service, and the lawyers at the firm every year did thousands and thousands of hours of work on pro bono cases. And I see that in our law students. At Stanford, we have well upwards of 90% of our students participating in pro bono work during their time in law school. I think our last graduating class did something like 18,000 hours of pro bono by the time they'd graduated. Which is many years of full-time work that they provided in legal services. And one of the things we saw just last spring was our students starting a COVID pro bono project, which spread and brought in law students from other law schools to deal with pandemic-related legal issues, such as eviction or access to public benefits or wage and hour issues that low-wage workers might be experiencing in the pandemic. And so one thing that I would urge students, whatever their intended career path, there is some good you can do through pro bono work, and law school is a great time to start incorporating that into your practice of law.
Sure is. And Dean, thank you for the great pro bono work you've done. I know I've watched with great admiration a number of the cases you've been involved in. And so thanks for your leadership there. And it really is the case that whether we go into public interest law directly or work for a firm, there's opportunities to give back in the legal profession. And so it's really great to see that happening. One quick comment that I want to make before I go to my next question is that we also have a number of students asking about, financial aid and for their own journey through the application process. And I just want to remind all of our candidates today that at every law school, there's a wonderful dean, wonderful also admission dean, people with financial aid expertise and enrollment expertise. Reach out to them because the schools do have a lot of financial aid programs, and that can help you if you need that assistance as you're going through law school. I also want to give a big reminder for the fact that LSAC has a fee waiver program. I think almost $5 million a year that we're able to help candidates with for taking the LSAT and applying to law school. We also have, of course, the free LSAT prep through the Khan Academy and through many of our own programs at the main one called Law Hub. And so you can really get that help that you need in making that journey into law school. So make sure that you're looking up those opportunities, and even with the LSAT Flex that we're doing, we were very mindful that some people may need some assistance with hardware, and we've been having a loaner program for laptops so that candidates can get that assistance with being able to take the LSAT from their homes. So Dean, let me turn now and ask you to imagine you're kind of back where you might be ready to go to law school, but you get the knowledge you have already. And I know talking to you today, I wish I could go back to law school. There's so many opportunities. But what advice might you give yourself today, knowing what you know now? If you're out there in the candidate's position, what are some of your thoughts?
I would say to try to explore as much as you can before you go to law school, and then while you're in law school through externships and internships and clinics and summer jobs, what different areas of law are really like. I think that it's easy to have an idea in your head of what you might be interested in, but then to find out what the lawyers in that kind of work do on a day-to-day basis is so important. So I'll talk to, for example, students interested in international human rights, because that's one of the fields that I specialize in. And you can have a career in international human rights with completely different day-to-day job responsibilities depending on what aspect of that you pursue. You could be a lawyer at the U.S. State Department working within the U.S. federal government, and your day would look like one set of things. If you're working for a small NGO out in the field, your day would be completely different. If you're a litigator, it's going to be very different than if you're someone who's engaged in more policy work or working in an international organization like the UN. And so it's not enough just to pick a substantive area of law that you're interested in, but you do really need to try to get a feel for what you like on a day-to-day basis. Is it sitting in your office reading and writing a brief? Is it being in court, standing up and trying cases? Is it meeting with clients? You know, what do you enjoy? What makes you happy to get out of bed in the morning? Because I think one of the really critical things for career happiness, and we see lawyers are not always the most happy professionals, but those who find work that gives them meaning, and that could be, you know, helping a business client launch their, you know, their company, solving their problems, whatever it is, figure out what gives you meaning in your work, and that'll make it much easier to stay up late at night reading that case for class, or when you're practicing law, to get up in the morning and get to work. And so try to find what it is that's meaningful to you.
That's really good advice. And I want to turn to Ken to bring in some more questions from our audience. I know there's a number of them out there, but as I do that, Dean, that advice is really sound in the sense that, you know, we often, when we love what we do, we do it differently. You know, we enjoy it, we do it better. And because there are so many different things you can do with a law degree, learning some of that up front so you can have a sense, you know, do I want to be in court, you know, litigating? Would I rather be building things? And lawyers are healers and they're builders, and there's many, many roles. So depending on your personality and what you happen to like, you'll find that sweet spot, as the dean notes. So Ken, let me get you back into this. What other kind of questions for Dean Martinez are coming in from our audience today? I'll open it up to you to share a few of those.
Yeah, Kellye, thanks. And Dean Martinez, you're sparking a lot of questions. I think we have more than a couple hundred so far.
Yeah.
Again, we will get back to everyone, but I'll ask some, touching on things we really haven't discussed before, and when we're seeing multiple really framings of the question. So one is from international students. And we know we have international students who are interested in either the JD or an LLM. They may be licensed in their own country. We also have international students who are outside of the US and international students inside the US. So all of these groups of students are facing challenges. What advice can you give to foreign educated lawyers and students today?
I think it's a very challenging year for everyone in terms of international, whether it's students trying to come to the US or US students who had maybe been planning to study abroad and have had those plans upset by the pandemic. And I think it's just a year of really unprecedented challenges in terms of international travel. And I think that in the long run, those international ties are so important to the future of the legal profession, to so many areas of practice. I think back to one of my first jobs after I clerked here in the US was working for the UN. And just for me, what a mind-opening experience it was. I shared an office with lawyers from France, from South Africa, from the UK, and hearing just from China and hearing how differently legal systems approached problems was, to me, a really eye-opening experience that has affected the trajectory of my career ever since. And when I think about the kinds of practice that people engage in today, there's so much to be learned cross-border. If you're working in any kind of business practice, there are very high odds that your practice is going to include some international problems where businesses are doing deals across borders or selling goods or having operations in different parts of the world. But even what may seem like a very local practice, you can learn something from learning about how it's done elsewhere. I remember at Stanford, we have a bunch of travel programs where we take students to other countries to study legal issues there. And I was leading a group of our students. We were actually in The Hague studying international criminal justice. And one of the students on the trip, his plan and what he's doing now was working in a small town in the US doing low-wage worker protection and working on what seemed to be a very local issue. But what he realized was actually many countries have low-wage workers. And he learned actually from talking to people that we ran into in The Hague that, you know, other countries have different models of courts and administrative procedures for protecting workers. And so even planning on what seemed to be a very local practice, I'm going back to the small town that I'm from, I want to help low-wage workers, having that global context to realize, actually, maybe there's a great idea from somewhere else that I could use in my work here is incredibly important. And at the same time, for all those students from outside the United States who want to study here, I think it's incredibly useful for them in their future careers. And it's unfortunate that the travel has been so restricted in all kinds of ways this year. And I would just say, you know, for some, there are online opportunities, but otherwise, you know, I think don't be daunted. Eventually, travel will get back to something more like the normal world. And at that point, I think it's wonderful to have people from countries outside the U.S. coming here to study, and U.S. law students going abroad to study.
Wonderful. That's great advice. You're right. We used to think of comparative and international law as their own discrete subjects, but now we see that they really are interwoven through really every subject, just like you mentioned before with technology.
Yes, absolutely.
Dean, we know that law schools are interested in interdisciplinary study and joint degrees. In this particular time, is this a good time or not a good time, or the same as usual in terms of thinking of joint law degrees with other advanced degrees?
You know, I think that has been a real trend in legal education, and it's a great time for pursuing a joint degree and interdisciplinary work. I think Stanford is really very engaged in interdisciplinary work. About half of our faculty have a PhD in another discipline as well as their law degree. And we have a huge number of joint degree programs. We have at Stanford 21 formal joint degree programs, 28 individual joint degrees, and out of our JD population of about 560, we have about 80 students who are doing joint degrees of one kind or another. So a pretty significant number. And this really, I think, is both an advantage to students in thinking about the kinds of expertise that may help them in their legal careers and developing a specialty, and in preparing them for working with clients who are not going to be very often trained in law, but you might be working with a client who's an engineer or a business person or a government official. And so understanding the way in which different disciplines approach problems is really important. I'll just give one story of one of our students. One of our 1Ls last year took a health law class with one of our faculty who has a joint appointment at the law school at Stanford and the medical school, and became interested in a research topic and worked closely with that faculty member who sort of mentored them through the project. And this year, that law student's research paper was published in the New England Journal of Medicine, one of the very top medical journals. And we see in so many areas, whether it's in health law or environmental law, we're understanding the science behind some of the challenges that we're facing. Having that expertise across disciplines is something that will give students an edge in approaching their legal careers and in solving problems for clients and in solving problems for society. So I think that I would definitely encourage students to consider either pursuing joint degrees or even just taking classes if their law school allows. Take a computer science class or take a class at the business school at your university or things like that. It may be very helpful to you in your legal career.
Yeah. Thank you. For students who are thinking about law school today and they've been following trends in different subject areas, do you project that trends will change in terms of the, quote, hot areas of the law, the emerging areas of the law, COVID and post-COVID?
Yeah, the hot areas of law are always changing. And so I would definitely urge students not to pick something just because it's hot, but to pick something they're really interested in and they feel they can grow in. And I think one of the nice things about law also is that as much as specialization is a trend, lawyers are also generalists in a way. Legal education is generalist in a way. And I know many people who went all through law school thinking they were going to be IP lawyers and then,
Right.
ended up doing something completely different because of when they got to a law firm, their first case was an antitrust case and they just loved it so much they, ended up in that field. So I think that what's important for students is to get that broad set of skills and knowledge so that they can learn how to learn the law and learn new things when they're out in practice, but then to pick what interests them and study that, because things are going to change, and what might be hot today won't necessarily be what's hot in 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, thank you. Dina, 2 more questions that I'll turn over to Kellye. So Kellye and I both share a similar background, that in our families, we're first-generation lawyers. And you have a lot of students who are applicants through LSAC to law school for the first time, in some ways lacking the context that others have who've had lawyers in their family. Any specific advice for first-generation law students and lawyers, and anything specifically in the context of what we're going through now with COVID?
I think it's so important to bring people into the legal profession who don't have lawyers in their family, who are the first person in their family to become a lawyer, maybe the first generation to go to college, to bring in people of all these different backgrounds, because that's part of delivering equal justice to our society, is to have people from different backgrounds entering the profession and able to then go out and understand where clients are coming from and to meet the needs of different sectors in society. So first, I would offer encouragement. It may seem a little daunting when you hear classmates who are applying to law school who maybe have lawyers in their family. And I, as I've already told you, I did have a lawyer in my family, and that undeniably helped me understand what I was signing up for. But there are a huge number of students who don't have lawyers in their families, and a huge number of successful lawyers who are the first person in their family who went to college, first person in their family who became a lawyer. And so don't be intimidated underneath that surface of seeming to know what's going on. Most of your classmates actually are feeling as nervous and insecure about the process of applying to law school as you are. They just may seem a little more confident on the surface. Second, I would say to take advantage of the resources that schools are now offering. At Stanford, we've added a lot of programming to our orientation for 1Ls to bring people up to speed on the legal profession, to try to demystify some of the things like law, what is law review? Why would you do something like that? What's the role of that? Law reviews are student published journals in law schools where professors and judges publish articles about legal topics and students work on them as editors. And traditionally in the legal profession, being on law review is something that's seen as a resume enhancement and a good experience to have in law school, because you get experience editing and reading a lot of articles, and you get that, it helps your legal research and writing to do that. And so demystifying things like law review that you may hear thrown about when you come to law school, take advantage of that. There's books, there's websites, law schools are offering programming, but definitely before you show up on campus, read some of those books that are out there that try to demystify law school, and know that even the people who seem like they know what they're doing, they're also new and nervous. So don't be intimidated.
That's great advice. Okay, my final question, and this one is really from me and not the audience, and then I'll turn it over to Kellye. So, Jenny Martinez, what changes post-COVID do you think that the pandemic will have? I mean, teachers have been teaching, whether we call it online or remotely. We've seen schools act more nimbly than we've ever seen them before. So what are the lasting, more permanent changes, say, effective in 2021?
Yeah, I think all of the legal profession is going to be changed by what we've experienced. We see law firms working online. We see courts having hearings online. Even the U.S. Supreme Court, which is the most traditional body around, has been having oral arguments by telephone. And so I think we're going to see a broader transformation in the use of technology across business and across the legal system. And that will also filter back into how we're training our students, what we're training them for, and the different ways in which schools deliver education. I think that we've seen the potential for greater use of technology in legal education, and also the value of mixing that with hands-on experience in things like clinics or externships where students are getting to represent clients while they're in law school, which has been an ongoing trend. And so looking at the ways to give students opportunities to get out into the world and to do experiential learning, I think is something where we've looked for new ways to do that during the pandemic, and students have been doing online internships and externships and online clinics, and I think that it's interesting to see the ways in which the system has adapted for that, and the potential for students to to engage in, particularly in some of that hands-on work in ways that will extend post-pandemic.
Yeah. Well, law schools have done a tremendous job since March. Thanks. Kellye, let me turn it back to you.
Well, thank you, Ken. And I just want to note for all of you who are asking questions about specifics about the application process, let me suggest that you start with LSAC because we can help you generally with that journey. And then remember that every law school has on its website information about applying specifically to that school. That will give you the application deadlines, who to talk to for more information, how to apply for financial aid, and everything you need to take that journey. We work really closely with all of our member law schools throughout the US, and all of us together are there to provide that information and help your journey be successful. So please consult us or the admission offices at the law schools where you're interested in, and you'll find experts there to help guide you through each of these steps. And I do want to really just reinforce what both Ken and Dean Martinez have said, which is that whether you're a first generation college grad or you've had 3 generations or more of lawyers in your family, there's a role for you today. And so finding that motivation and that place where you really want to make a contribution, your schools can help you do that, and they're eager to do it. I also see a lot of questions about timing. And again, the schools will tell you what their application deadlines are. It's always good to apply earlier rather than later. And so, getting everything in order soon this fall. Right now is when things really start, when students start to take their LSATs and start to apply. And then that goes all the way through the fall into early winter as those decisions for next fall start to get made. So you've got plenty of time to make this journey, and we're all there to help you with it. Dean, I want to come back to you as we get near the kind of closing time for the hour today, but I wonder if there's any last thoughts you have for candidates you'd like to share today, and then I have just a final question that I want to ask you that's a little more general.
Well, I would just encourage students who are thinking about applying to law school to really explore the profession, to get to know more about what being a lawyer is like by reading up, talking to people, reaching out at your college to a pre-law society or a pre-law advisor, to trying to have conversations with current law students to see what it's like, because the law can be an incredibly rewarding profession for the reasons I've said, that you have this opportunity to take your training and your talent and use it to help other people. And you can help people with all different kinds of problems, whether it's a business that is trying to enter into a contract that's going to enable them to do something fantastic in their business, or a criminal defendant who needs a good lawyer to help them protect their rights, or someone who's being evicted from their home, someone who's trying to get a patent on their new invention. There are so many ways that lawyers can help clients that it really is a profession and a calling. And I would just encourage students who are interested in the legal profession to follow their passion, to find out more about the areas that they're interested in, and to, if it seems like the right fit for them, to go ahead and take the plunge. And if they're on the fence, to spend some more time exploring, because as I said, it is a lot of work to go to law school, and it goes best when you're really excited to be there and excited to become a lawyer.
So true. And one of the other resources I'll remind everybody of is LSAC hosts a number of national and international forums every year so that schools and candidates can talk to one another and you can get the information that you need. And let me note that our first forum is scheduled for September 26th. And the registration deadline for that is September 23rd. And so again, if you go to lsac.org, you can sign up, and that forum will give you a chance to get to know all the law schools and ask the questions that you may have. So that's a good way, as Dean Martinez says, to learn more and to start to hone in on what your interests are for pursuing legal education. Well, Dean Martinez, again, I really thank you for being with us, and I want to just give you a chance for any concluding comments you may have. This really is, as everybody keeps saying, an unprecedented time in our world, and I wonder, given your leadership for the rule of law, any closing comments you have about where we are and how we can all keep moving forward toward justice together?
Thanks for that chance. I think that one of the things that I know from my work as an international human rights lawyer and working for on those issues is just how important the rule of law is to societies around the world, including the US. The rule of law is the basic foundation on which the well-being of ordinary people is built. If you have solid rule of law, then people can go about their daily lives secure in the knowledge that their rights are protected, that life will be predictable and fair and just. And that's important for everything from knowing that your rights are going to be respected by the police, to knowing that your business and its rights will be respected as you interact with other people with whom you might do business. It allows the kind of economic prosperity that enables societies to flourish. It allows the security that individuals have, knowing that their human rights are going to be respected and protected, and that they can go about pursuing their lives peacefully and in a prosperous society. And so law is the foundation of all of that, and lawyers contribute vitally to that foundation of rule of law, both here in the United States and in countries around the world. So I would just encourage our students that this is a noble calling to create those conditions in which societies can flourish. And I hope that they will pursue justice in their careers.
Thank you, Dean. We really appreciate you being with us today and spending this hour, given that you're just starting classes and you have so much on your plate right now. So thank you for your time and the inspiration you provide. And as the Dean has noted, we need everyone working together for equal justice. So whether you're already in the legal profession and with us today, or you're thinking of joining us, know that we really appreciate you and need your voice as we all work for justice together. So I want to ask you to please consider joining us next month. Kellye and Ken will continue to bring you current issues in legal education each month, and we hope you'll keep tuning in to join us live. And if you can't join us live, please know that we do record, and we then post this on our website, on iLaw's website, and perhaps we can get the Dean to post it as well, so that we can have easy access to the program today. So with that, Ken, great to share the second anniversary with you on this show. And Dean Martinez, I want to thank you for being with us. You were a terrific guest, and thanks for your leadership. So we'll see everybody next month. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you all. Thank you.